With the overwhelming success of my My Little Pony card game videos last year, we're starting this year off right with a deck building tutorial. A couple of quick disclaimers before we get started. Firstly, there's no solid metagame for the MLP card game yet. After playing the game for almost a month, I do have a very good grasp of what I think the metagame will be, and that's what I'm going to base my videos on. Everything hasn't been discovered yet, so new developments could make this video kind of outdated. Also, this is mainly a video for people who want to get into the competitive aspect of the game. From a competitive aspect, some cards and characters are naturally going to be better or stronger in the game than other cards and characters. This is unavoidable, and it could end up being that your favorite character or your favorite card is not very good. If you don't want to be locked down by the meta, then that's fine. Play with a fun deck you like using the characters that you enjoy and have fun with. There's nothing wrong with being a casual player, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. However, this video will be on the competitive aspects. Longest disclaimer ever. Let's get started. The first decision is going to be the biggest. Which main character are you going to use? Right now in the game there are 6 main characters. They each bring with them some kind of mechanic that is unique to their color. Please forgive me ahead of time for the shoddy card shots. Scans of the main 6 are really hard to find. Trust me, I looked. I had to create these using trial deck opening videos, and they came out well enough to read the effect text, and that's about it. That aside, let's look at each of the main 6 individually. Twilight's mechanic is Studious. If you have at least one character with Studious in a face-off that wins, then you get 1 action point. One huge downside to this effect is it doesn't stack. Even if you have 3 characters with Studious in a face-off that wins, you only get 1 action point. Her regular effect is whenever you flip over a card from the top of your deck for a face-off, if it's an event, you can put it in your hand. Next is Rarity. Rarity brings Inspired to the table. You can look at the top card of your opponent's deck and put it either on top or on bottom. This effect does stack, meaning if you have 3 ponies in play with Inspired, you can look at the top card of your opponent's deck and put it on top or bottom 3 times. Her regular effect is your opponent has to pay an extra 1 action point when they move a character from home or problem to her problem. Pinkie Pie's mechanic is Random. If you have at least 1 character with Random in a face-off, then whenever you flip over a 1, you ignore it and flip a new card. This kind of stacks on itself. It guarantees you'll get at least 2 in a face-off and gives you more cards to stack on the bottom of your deck. Getting all of those early game cards out of the way is really worth her effect. Applejack's mechanic is Stubborn. Even if she's tapped, aka exhausted, she still gives her power towards face-offs and solving problems. Her regular effect is if she's at home or a problem where one of her friends is dismissed, you can put that friend on top of your deck instead. This can get pretty funny and shenanigansy because you can also do it when your home limit is reached and you need to discard friends because you have too many friends at home. Dash's mechanic is Swift. All ponies with Swift only need 1 action point instead of 2 when they move. Her regular effect is when you move her from home to a problem, you can pay 1 additional action point to move one of your other characters. It's kind of like giving any of your other characters Swift. And finally, Fluttershy brings Caretaker. Ponies with Caretaker get a +1 power boost when they're at a problem with a critter friend. Her regular effect lets you pull one of your critters from the board to her problem at the beginning of a face-off. This includes power face-offs, double face-offs, and Troublemaker face-offs, so it's not something you want to forget about. All 6 of the main characters have their uses and can be built around. For those of you that don't really care about the characters in particular though, and only care about their powers, I do have something for you. As with all card games, some of the main characters do have a slight advantage over some of the others. In other words, this is Kudo's Pony Tiers list. Standing tall at Tier 1 are going to be Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash. The 2 most important aspects of MLP CCG are going to be solving problems and winning face-offs. Cards that help with either of those 2 problems are going to be top tier. Because of this inevitability, cards that add power are going to be naturally the strongest. Because power affects both solving problems and winning face-offs. Fluttershy pulls guaranteed power from most likely your home, but also the other problem if need be to her problem. While that critter's there, she also gets a +1 power boost. This ability will give you the edge in a lot of face-offs. And the +1 power boost makes it easier for her to solve problems. Rainbow Dash already gives a natural 3, and you can pull any one of her friends to her problem. You're not just paying 2 to move 3 power, you're paying 2 to move like 6, 7-ish power. Not only does this make solving problems an absolute joke, but it also makes it way too easy to win face-offs. Our Tier 2 lineup consists of Pinkie Pie and Rarity. Pinkie Pie and Rarity both affect whether or not you're going to win a face-off. They do so with invisible numbers, which isn't as good as guaranteed numbers that you can see and plan around on the board. Also, neither of them help with solving problems. Pinkie Pie's random effect is very powerful, but there is the slight downside that you could still end up with a 2. Because you don't know exactly what you're going to get, you just know it's not going to be a 1, it's really difficult to plan around. Her regular ability is pretty good though, because it affects how much your opponent needs to solve problems, which is almost as good as fixing what you need to solve problems. I would say between the two, Rarity is slightly better. The 1 your opponent has to pay when moving a character to Rarity's problem really does add up quickly. Also, if you're using Inspired correctly, then what you're looking to do is put somebody with 1 power on top of your opponent's deck before a face-off to guarantee they're only going to draw a 1. The only problem here, though, is if your opponent has like a 3 or a 4 on top and you put that on bottom, you're still playing with invisible numbers. All you really did was decrease the chance of them getting a 4 or 3 by 1. And finally, we have Tier 3, which is going to be Twilight Sparkle and Applejack. While they're both decent cards, neither of them help with either solving problems or winning face-offs. Twilight Sparkle does give you an extra 1 action point if you happen to win, but the fact that Studious doesn't stack really hurts this card. Also, notice how it's if you win a face-off. She doesn't assist in winning the face-off in any way, it's just if you just so happen to win the face-off, you get her effect. Then you have her natural effect. If you happen to flip over an event card, you can put it in your hand. Again, that's if you flip over an event card. If you flip over a friend card or something, she might as well just be a vanilla. You could argue that Applejack does in a way help win face-offs and solve problems because if she's tapped or exhausted, then she still helps. The thing is, unless your deck is doing something that guarantees she's going to be tapped, this effect is useless. You can never guarantee your opponent's going to run a deck that causes you to exhaust friends. But anyways, this is my prediction for what the pony tier lists will be when competitive decks start coming out. A lot of you out there are probably wondering why I didn't take their flip conditions into consideration when I was making this list. I've playtested with all of the main 6. Every single one of them, if put in the correct deck, can flip within the first 3 turns. All of them, no matter how hard it seems to get one flipped over another. If you find you're not flipping quite fast enough, then it's something you need to fix with your deck, not just with the main character. The only one I could really see arguing is Pinkie Pie, because she can be meta-played. If your opponent sees you have Pinkie on the board, they can just split up their friends, and it's whatever. But I don't really see this as a downside, because if your opponent has to split up their friends and make sure they keep somebody on both problems, it's going to affect how quickly they solve problems and lead to more face-offs in your favor. Once you've chosen your main character, it's on to the next step. Picking your friends. Most of the time, you're going to be playing a deck with 2 colors. The first color is probably going to be the same as your main character. The second will be a supporting color that adds variety or fixes weaknesses. Selecting your friends can be hard, but just pick the 2 colors you like and follow these simple steps. First of all, go through each color and find the 1 cost no requirement. As a rule of thumb, if you find a 1 cost 1 requirement, and the color just so happens to be the same color as your main character, these are acceptable substitutes. Once you've found these cards, run 3 of each. Next, do the same thing for each color, but find the 2 cost no requirement. Again, if you find a 2 cost 1 requirement and the 1 color is the same as your main character, then you can use this as an acceptable substitute. Just make sure the friend still has 2 power. The 2 cost no requirement should also be at 3. Mathematically, if you've done this for both colors, then you should be at 12 friends. This number is absolutely perfect. You run bare minimum 10 cards that don't have color requirements. The 1 cost and 2 costs are perfect because you can start playing them really early. The sweet spot for friends and decks is 25. That means if we're running 12 colorless and then 13 colored, we still have a lot of room for the good cards in our sets. For the most part, you want friends who have power equal to or higher than their cost. This rule of thumb can be ignored if you find a card that has a really good effect. Some good inclusions are cards that get extra power during face-offs. As far as colors go, try to keep it balanced. If you do have to sway one way or the other for color requirements, then it's better to have more cards that are the color opposite of your main. If you can flip your main is a guaranteed 3 power of their color. So it's better if you can make sure to have the other color completely covered. This is by no means necessary, but should be in your thought process while you're making your deck. Once you've picked your 25 friends, it's time for the next step. Picking your Troublemakers. Troublemakers can absolutely devastate your opponent if they're played early enough. Balancing them is hard, however, because if you play them too often or too late in the game, you're just going to give your opponent a power boost in points. My personal recommendation is 5 Troublemakers. Just pick 2 Troublemakers you really like and put 3 of one and 2 of the other. If you're really stuck on what Troublemakers to use, Yellow Parasprite and Timberwolf are my recommendations. When you're looking at a Troublemaker you want to use, just ask yourself, would I be annoyed if this card was played on me? If the answer is yes, you throw it in. Since Rainbow Dash requires that you have a Troublemaker at her problem in order to flip her, you might want to include a few more. I've been playing around with 8 Troublemakers, but with experimentation, I'm sure you can find something better. We're down to the last part of making our draw deck. We need events and resources. If you've been following my other ratios, you should have 25 friends and 5 Troublemakers. That gives us 15 events and resources to fill out. The first event you should look at are the ones that give +1/+1 power and 2 colors. From there on, it really is just preference. There are inevitably going to be cards that pop up for every color that are staples and need to be ran. Assault Cake, for example, will need to be in every pink deck. If you just can't find enough events and resources you enjoy, then you can put in more friends and Troublemakers, but I recommend keeping it at 25 friends and 20 not friends. The reason I use this recommended ratio is because when you're flipping cards for a face-off, you don't really want to flip friend cards. Not only do they go to the bottom of your deck after they're flipped, but they normally don't have as much power as events and resources and Troublemakers. You shouldn't have that problem though, every color has really good events and resources. Try to use 2 to 3 of your favorite events and resources, and try to stay away from only using one copy. This can lead to a lot of inconsistencies. Finally, let's look at our last step, picking our problem deck. The problem deck seems to be what everybody's having problems with, but I promise it's very easy. For starters, there are 2 cards you're always going to want in your problem deck. A starting problem that requires your opponent has 4, and a starting problem that requires your opponent has 8. Normally you'll want to start the game with a 1-1 problem that's really easy to complete, but there are some ponies that you don't want to do that against. For example, Applejack's flip condition is that she's at a problem where she's solving it with more power than required. If you start with the 1-1 problem, then she only needs 5 because her requirement is 4. But if you start with the 4-3, then they need 9 because it's 8. Having a good supply of starting problem options is a good way to control the pace of the game. As for the other 8, you might want to look at the problem's effects. There are some problems that have really good effects that can really help you out. Fluttershy duelists, for example, should definitely run some Thorn in his paws. Your opponent has to pay more action points to play a friend at this problem if you have at least 3 yellow friends in play at it already. There's also a variety of 2-tone problems that you should look into. These are almost always really good, so you should try finding a set for your problem deck. See? Overall, making a problem deck is relatively simple. A quick recap. First, choose your main character. Choose one other color to go with your deck. Find 25 friends that you enjoy. Use the 3 1-cost colorless and the 3 2-cost colorless for both colors. Add in 5 Troublemakers, most likely 3 of one that you like and 2 of another. Lastly, add 15 events and resources. If possible, these should include the 1-cost plus 2 power cards. With the card game still so new, have fun with it, experiment, and see if you can find a build better than mine. There are lots of deviations you can do. For example, I hear a lot of people are using 3-color decks. While 3 colors is completely possible, it is a little bit unstable. You might want to consider running something like 28 to 30 friends instead of the regular 25. This does hurt your face-off potential a little bit, but even that can be worked around. This video is running a little long. If you want to see more information on some combos I found, or a few more tips, then leave it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, then why not leave me a like? If I get enough likes, I'll do a follow-up. And lastly, subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudo news. Goodbye for now.